I'm going to go ahead and sew this on. I've got some pre-wax thread here from Tandy Leather, so I won't have to put any beeswax on it. It's already on here. And basically I just, as you may have seen in my other videos, if you watched them, just thread it through one side. It doesn't need to be tied or anything, just thread it through. And you may hear my little dog here whining and tapping in the background. He's tapping on the floor. Okay, I think I will just start at the corner here. Put it in the two adjacent holes to start with. Even it up and then start the back and forth pattern. Again, each hole the needle goes through twice. You know, one needle goes through one direction and the other needle goes through the opposite direction. And I like to, if I can keep from getting it tangled up, I like to kind of give it a tug each time it goes through to make sure it's nice and tight. This gets easier as the thread gets shorter. Okay, you can see how that's coming along. So I'll go ahead and finish that up and come back. I've finished stitching this all the way around. I'm going to cut this off and use a lighter to melt the thread and lock it in place. And that's what it ends up looking like. So now I can glue this down and drill the holes and stitch the holes for this. So I'll go ahead and glue it down and drill the holes and stitch it and then come back. I finished gluing this and stitching it on the lower part of the belt loop. The next part is I'm going to glue these edges for the stitching on the edge that'll hold it all together. This doesn't have to be a lot, it's just enough to hold it together while I'm drilling the holes. The stitching will hold it together. But it also helps to have a nice tight seam when you're all done. Okay, I'll press that together for a little bit and then do one other thing probably before I'll go ahead and just hold it together and then mark for the holes. This glue is dry. I went ahead and put the little dents in there to mark where the holes will be drilled on the edge with the star wheel. Oops. And I'm going to go ahead and trim the edges with this little tool here, this edge tool, and it'll just take off a piece. And I may have to re-stain this edge. Anyway, it'll just round off the edge. And here's the kind of an edge it'll give. I'm going to go drill the holes in this and stitch it up, and I'll come back. Okay, I finished drilling the holes and stitching it up. So the next thing to do is put some sealer on it and burnish the edges, and it's just about done. Okay, the last step on the finish work is to put on some sealer. And this is EcoFlow Satin Sheen. And I'm going to do the inside as well as the outside. This is a water-based sealer, so it doesn't matter if you get it on your hands. You can clean it off before it dries. This is a step too, that as this sealer dries, I like to burnish the edges to make them nice and smooth, which gives it a nice finished effect when it's all done. One of the last steps is to burnish the edges, which I talked about earlier. And basically it's just rubbing the edges with this stick or something hard, and it smooths out any rough leather on the edges and gives it a nice appearance. And I do this a few times as this sealer is drying, because at first it's a little soft and sticky, but as it dries it hardens up. Also, I want to do it on the belt loop. Okay, I'll do that a few more times before it's done, and then also buff it out with a cloth. This sheath blank is dry. I'm going to go ahead and mark a border around here that I'm going to use to cut off the edge so I can sew the seam. And then I'll have to pry it off, but I need something. Oh, I can probably use this knife. Okay, before I do anything else on this one, I think I will get the other piece of leather wet and get it molded for the next one. So, as I may have mentioned earlier, I'm going to make 3 of these, all with a slightly different variation. I went ahead and trimmed off the excess on this, and I cut another piece that's going to be the back. Here's my wood form, give you an idea. Now this one's going to be a little different in that this last one, the clip goes over the top. Like this. This next one I'm going to make a cutout around this clip, and it's going to be recessed. That's why I picked such thick leather. So I'll get to work on that and then come back. Okay, I went ahead and trimmed, this is a separate piece, but I went ahead and trimmed out the slot for the clip on this one, as you can see here. I think I had to figure out what kind of tooling I'm going to put on the front here before I go any further. think the first thing I'm going to do is put a crease line around the edge of this slot. So I'm going to get the leather wet here a little bit so that I can make that crease. And I'm going to use this as a backing because it kind of fits over or underneath that area that's molded for the knife. And I think I'll go over that with a stylus I've got here to smooth out that line. Here's a stylus. Here's a close-up of that groove I just put around there. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use a tool called a mule's foot. This is a small one. If it'll focus. I put something bigger up next to it. There, you can see it. And I'm going to make a pattern similar to that around this portion up to here and then up all the way up. And again, I'm going to use this piece of railroad to give me a solid surface to pound against. Okay, and I'll continue that up and come back. Wanted to give you an idea what it looks like after I stamp that. The next thing I'm going to have to do is get an idea where the belt loop's going to go. I don't know if I'm going to do that at this point or go ahead and dye it. So let me let this dry for a few minutes. Maybe I'll dye both pieces and then put the belt loop on. Because I think I'm going to glue this together before I stitch anything. So I'll have to put the belt loop on before I stitch this together. This is almost dry and I'll be staining it here shortly, but I went ahead and started molding for the third case. So I'll let that dry and keep shaping it until it's dry. I'm going to go ahead and dye these pieces, and I'm using a color called mahogany on this. So I'll get started on this and then cut away and finish it off camera. Okay, I've gone ahead and dyed both pieces. It's pretty wet right now. It will lighten up slightly, but it's going to be pretty dark. But it's kind of got a dark brown reddish hue to it. I've gone ahead and marked out on here with a pencil about where this front part of the case will fit and figured out where the belt loop will be. I marked it with pencil, and I went ahead and made little dents in this to show where the stitches are going to be on this part and on the inside. So the next step is I'm going to go ahead and glue the belt loop on here and stitch it on.